About a couple of days ago, I actually came up with some topics pertaining to mine to what made WWE pretty stale in terms of stuff that still goes on. Too many championships, the brand split, all that stuff. But now today, I've decided to go ahead and vent towards another thing that WWE continues to do besides those two other videos, bringing up some points. This video is going to be focusing on way too many WWE pay-per-views. This has been something that has really kind of hurt the feuds in this company. Too many pay-per-views. It just seems like every few weeks there's a pay-per-view, even if they are dual brands. Sometimes we get two pay-per-views in the span of a month. And back then when the dual brands began, it made kind of perfect sense because they both were different shows, like Raw and SmackDown would each have a pay-per-view. But it goes on to this very day to where we have so many of them, despite the fact that they push these as dual brands. The biggest factor is that they still do this thing where Raw superstars appear on SmackDown and vice versa with little to really no explanation, despite they are dual brands. The problem is, however, it causes feuds on one show to be affected that are not really getting a lot of exposure, and that really is the case where it just gets to a point where two pay-per-views or so many pay-per-views intend to overshadow those feuds because they either are not utilized on a pay-per-view or they're just put on a pay-per-view but with little to no build-up because they were adding more feuds from one show to another. And that's really one of the biggest things that I've really been vocal about with WWE. Back in the 80s and early 90s, we really didn't have a lot of pay-per-views. We had the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. That was it. But then over the years, they began adding ones like they did the Tuesday in Texas one, which was pretty good. But then they came up a few years later with the In Your House pay-per-views. And then before you know it, they were doing like Bad Blood and No Mercy and Unforgiven and, et cetera, et cetera. And it just kind of expands throughout the years to where you have so many pay-per-views where sometimes it's very hard to really even keep up with what they're doing with one. And then here comes another one a couple of weeks later. There's just way too many of them to follow. And I just think it's really excessive, along with the other stuff that I mentioned about too many titles and the draft and all that stuff. They've got to remove some of the pay-per-views and just let these feuds play out week after week. So when they do eventually reach a major pay-per-view, they mean more rather than say, oh, every few weeks we got to have a pay-per-view. They don't need to do that anymore. They shouldn't be doing that as it is. There's just too many pay-per-views to really keep up with sometimes. Too many events. And this has been one of the many reasons to why this company, even now as it's gotten a little bit better since Triple H took over full control of creative in the company, there still are a lot of things really wrong with this company that they're still doing a lot of that really needs to stop. I mean, it might work for some of you fans out there, but too many pay-per-views, it just falls in line with the same thing I said about too many championships and a dual brand. The draft, it's all excessive and stale in terms of the idea. We don't need to have so many pay-per-views in the span of a year. And if anything, too many pay-per-views really is kind of ruining the tradition and the credibility of the major ones that they pushed back years ago. Yes, we still get a SummerSlam. Yes, we still get a WrestleMania. But all these pay-per-views that come in between those events, it just seems like more and more it's becoming excessive and too much. WWE really needs to back off on too many pay-per-views. Get rid of the ones that really don't need to be brought back. They need to get rid of some ones that really have not been big since over the last 10 years. They need to start pushing the major ones again and build feuds up weekly on either Raw or SmackDown and basically work from there to move into a major pay-per-view. That's the way they need to do it. That's why those major pay-per-views back in the 80s and 90s, it worked better because they were not excessively shoved at us. And they had plenty of months to build up feuds. Matches felt more built in terms of creative, and they were able to do more on the weekly shows. That's why feuds back then were bigger, where now it just seems like they start up and they have to just continue to face each other at every pay-per-view every few weeks. It's just really annoying. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some of them that were excessive, but they were still pretty good. Like, I love the old No Mercy and Bad Blood was pretty good. Hell in a Cell. they were great and all, but over time, as they got really kind of watered down, they just didn't feel like they were the pay-per-views that we remember from years ago. And they just staple any kind of name on it to make you think, gee, it's going to be another Hell in a Cell. But it ends up being some watered down, dumbed down pay-per-view with the Hell in a Cell name of it. But it doesn't feel like it's really special like the other pay-per-views did from the past, like other past Hell in a Cells, Elimination Chamber, all that. It just really defies all logic to have so many pay-per-views. That's all I'm really going to say. I prefer to go back to what worked because I am an old-fashioned wrestling fan. I would love to see stuff come along to where they eliminate some of the excessive stuff and they go back to what worked. But that's just what I want as an old wrestling fan. But what do you guys think? Tell me in the comments section. Comment down below. Hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys later.